The 28mm focal length is one of my favorite focal lengths in photography, and this is because it gives a wide field of view that is not too different from the human perspective. Apparently, the human perspective is approximately around 35 or 40mm focal length, but because it is slightly wider and there's a lot of space that you're not used to on the 28mm, then people might find it slightly off and they struggle to frame shots on the 28mm focal length. So today I'm going to be giving some tips on how you can master the 28mm focal length. I've been shooting with these two cameras for a while now. This is a film camera, the Minolta TC1, which is a 28mm focal length camera, and this is the Ricoh GRIII, which is a super famous digital camera that's also 28mm. So who is the 28mm focal length for, and what kind of pictures can you take? First of all, if you're looking for blurry backgrounds and really close-up portraits of maybe your face or some macro photography, I can tell you right away that this 28mm doesn't really work in that category of photos, and maybe you need a tighter focal length like 50 or even 85, 70. However, if you're used to taking pictures on the 35mm focal length and you want a bit of variety, you want to change things up a bit, then the 28mm might be the one focal length you should try. I think the 28mm is perfect for documentary photography or everyday life. If you go traveling, that's also suitable for 28mm. It's also good for contextual portraits where you take a portrait of someone, maybe a friend, your family, and you can see the background and you know what's going on. Tip number one is to be clear on what your subject is. If you're a beginner and you want to take a photo of something, you will have a sort of urge or sense to want to capture, and it might be because of your surroundings, of your vibes. But if it's a particular subject or a person that's interesting, you should make sure that this is highlighted in the image. With tighter focal lengths, this is easier to do because you just put that subject in the middle, or the row of thirds. The viewer will automatically look at that image because it's a tighter focal length. But because the 28mm is a wider focal length, you have to think of, how do I emphasize the subject? How do I make this pop out? There are several ways you can do this, like the rule of thirds, leading lines, right? The general ones. But some of my favorite techniques is to use lighting to emphasize the subject. Another one is to use different colors. If there's a big pop of color and there's a contrast, then your viewer's eyes will be automatically drawn to the colors. For this photo, I use lighting and color to sort of frame the image so that the subject stands out. You have the light at the top and then the greenish tint at the bottom, and then in the middle it's dark except for the guy who's walking around. Tip number two is to embrace the wideness of the 28mm. I started shooting from 38mm, 35mm focal length, and when I switched to 28, it felt very wide, and then there's a lot of things that comes into your frame. But one way to master the 28mm is you have to embrace things that come into your frame. One way to do this is to leverage the foreground, the midground, and the background. And because your field of view is so wide, you can incorporate many elements, right? So having a foreground element increases the depth of your photos. You can fit a lot of things into the frame, and this is the advantage of 28mm. I thought that this was such an interesting photo because there's lots of signage in here. You have the police car right in front and then a bunch of shops in the back. I think the key to a good photo for the 28mm is to fit a lot of things into the frame without it looking messy. Also, an important one is try to embrace the imperfectness of 28mm, because you're gonna have things come into the frame all the time. For example, you have people walking in, there are different objects guaranteed to be in your image that you might want to zoom in and crop out, but to get used to the 28mm, obviously try not to crop in a lot of time, although I'm guilty of this sometimes, but I try not to do it. My last tip for the 28mm is remember that you can walk around and reposition yourselves. If your subject is too small, then you can always reposition yourselves. Try to make that object bigger, take up more space, or if you want something out of the image, you can reposition yourself, re-angle yourself so that it's not in your image anymore. So that's one thing I would say that's really important for wider lenses. And yeah, that concludes this video of mastering the 28mm. Hopefully this video is useful. If you're interested in my style of photography or how to get the colors that I get on the Ricoh GR3, you can check out the link here. Thanks for watching. See you next time.